Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, we are going to discuss the different update operations in relational database management systems, and we have already learned about the different schema-based constraints in our previous video. So here we will also be discussing how to deal with these constraint violations when the different update operations are applied. Operations on relational data model is categorized into retrieval and updation. That is, either retrieving the data from the database or bringing about some changes to the data in the database. In this chapter, we are going to focus only on the update operations and not on the retrieval operations. There are three basic update operations. They are insert, delete, and modify. Whenever these three update operations are applied to the relations, we should also ensure that no integrity constraints are violated. We will also learn in this video the types of actions to be taken if a constraint is violated when we update the database. Let us see each of these update operations in detail. The first is the insert operation. This operation is used to insert or add a new tuple in a relation. Here I've taken two relations. One is employee with employee ID as its primary key and the other relation department with D number as its primary key. This operation insert can violate any of the four constraints that we have discussed in the previous video. The first constraint that we learned was the domain constraints. These domain constraints can be violated if the given attribute value doesn't appear in the corresponding domain. That is, if I'm trying to insert a new tuple in this relation employee, then the attribute values of the new tuple should match with the corresponding domain. If the data type of this attribute D number is int, then this value violates domain constraint. The default option to avoid this violation would be to reject this insertion. Let us see another example. Here I've taken an example of inserting a new tuple into employee relation with these values. Let us see if this insertion of a new tuple is acceptable or if it violates any constraints. Here we can see that there are two same values of the primary key employee ID, which is not possible. Therefore, it violates key constraint. We note that this constraint states that no two tuples of the primary key can be identical. The type of action to be taken when this constraint is violated is that DBMS could ask the user to change the value of the employee ID of the new tuple. Moving on to the next example, if I'm trying to insert a new tuple with these values into the employee relation, we can see that the value of the employee ID is null, which is not possible for a primary key. Therefore, it violates entity integrity constraint. We know that this constraint states that no primary key value can be null. If this kind of constraint occurs, the DBMS could ask the user to provide a value for employee ID and could accept the insertion if a valid employee ID is provided. Let us see one last example in this insert operation. In this example, I'm inserting a new tuple with these values into employee relation. From the previous video, we know that this D number is a foreign key because it refers to the primary key of another relation. We also learned that the values of the foreign key should match with the existing tuples it refers to. Since this value of the foreign key doesn't match with any of the values it refers to, it violates referential integrity constraint. When this constraint is violated, the DBMS could either ask the user to change this value to some valid value or to set it to null. Or it could also ask the user to insert a new tuple in the department relation with D number as 5 and could accept the original insertion of this new tuple only after a new tuple is created in the department relation with D number as 5. So this is about the insert operations and the different violations that can occur. If this operation violates one or more constraints, the default option would be to reject the insertion. The next type of operation is the delete operation. This operation is used to delete a tuple or tuples in a relation. And since it's only about deleting or removing a tuple from a relation, the delete operation can violate only the referential integrity constraint. And referential integrity constraint can be violated if the tuple or the row that is being deleted is referenced by the foreign keys from another relation. So here we have three relations: employee with employee ID as its primary key, project with project number as its primary key, and works on with employee ID and P number as its primary keys. Let us see few examples of the delete operation. The first example is delete the employee tuple with employee ID as 1331. This example specifies the deletion of this tuple where employee ID is 1331. This deletion is not acceptable because there are tuples in the works on relation that refers to this tuple. Therefore, if this tuple is deleted, then it will violate the referential integrity constraint. Now, if the delete operation violates this constraint, there are different actions that can be taken. The first option is to reject the deletion. The second option is to propagate or cascade the deletion. That is, when this tuple has to be deleted, we also delete the tuples that refer this tuple. That is, these two tuples. Let us see another example in this delete operation. Delete the works on tuple with employee ID as 1331 and P number is equal to 1. This deletion is acceptable because there are no other tuples in any of the relations that refer to this tuple that is being deleted. So this is about the delete operation. The third type of operation is the update or the modify operation. This operation is used to update or modify the existing values of one or more attributes in a tuple of a relation. Here I have taken the same example as taken earlier. We have two relations, employee with employee ID as the primary key and department with department number as its primary key. Let us see with few examples how this operation violates the constraints. The first example is update the D number of the employee tuple with employee ID is equal to 1330 to 1. Here it is necessary to specify the condition to select the tuple to be modified. This example is about updating the D number of the employee relation with employee ID 1330. The D number here is 2. They are asking us to update it to 1. So this update is acceptable because it does not violate any of the four constraints. Let us see another example. Update the D number of the employee tuple with employee ID is equal to 1330 to 7. In this example, in the employee relation, the department number or the D number of the employee 1330 should be updated to 7. This update is not acceptable because it violates referential integrity. We know that the D number of the employee relation is a foreign key because it refers to the D number of the department relation. And since the D number 7 does not exist in this relation department, we cannot update this D number to 7. So when this constraint is violated, we either reject the updation or we add a new tuple in this relation department with D number as 7. Or DBMS could ask the user to change this value. Moving on to the last example in the update operation. Update the employee ID of the employee tuple with employee ID is equal to 1330 to 1331. This updation is not acceptable and let us see why. This example is about updating the employee ID 1330 to 1331. So if I update the employee ID 1330 to 1331, it will violate the key constraint because there is already an employee ID with its value 1331. Also, updating this employee ID to 1331 will violate the referential integrity constraint because there is a tuple that refers to this employee ID. So therefore, this updation will violate the key constraint and the referential integrity constraint. So this is all about the update or the modify operation. With this, we come to the end of this video. In this video, we learned about the different operations that can bring about a change in the database. So the three operations are the insert operation, the delete operation, and the modify or the update operation. We also saw the different constraints that can be violated with these operations and also the types of actions that can be taken when these constraint violations occur. With this, we come to the end of this chapter, the relational database model. Hope you have understood all the concepts that we have discussed so far. Thank you.